evening. This is ET Now and you're with the India Development Debate. I'm Sandeep Gurumurthy joining you from a news center in Mumbai. Joining me in Delhi is my colleague and co-anchor Supriya Shrinate. Straight to the big debate tonight. It is fuel shock for the economy. Petrol prices touched an all-time high of 84 rupees 40 paise per litre in Mumbai today, thanks to 8 days of back-to-back hike in prices ever since the Karnataka elections got over. Not just petrol, the prices of diesel, which is considered to be the common man's fuel, are also at an all-time high. Well, consumers are sweating it out. It is the government, both the centre and the states, that are laughing all the way to the bank. Consider this, as of today, the dealer price of 1 litre of petrol is 37 rupees 19 paise, which means taxes and other levies make up for more than 47 rupees. But despite a steep increase in crude oil prices, the centre has ruled out a cut in excise duty, at least for now, although such a move will remain largely revenue neutral. This is simply unacceptable. It is high time the government tweaked the duty structure to cushion the impact, at least partially.
Now, experts warn that the steady increase in petrol and diesel prices could choke growth, let alone its negative impact on stoking inflation even higher. Industry Association FICCI has already raised the red flag, saying that the overall impact on high fuel prices could stall investment too, for the fear of demand slowdown. For the opposition parties, the spike in fuel prices has become a rallying point, with the Congress slamming the centre for fleecing the consumers. TMC leader Mamata Banerjee has also hit out at the central government, stating that the poor will be hit the hardest. The spike in fuel prices and its impact on the economy is the big topic of discussion and debate right here on the India Development Debate tonight. And let's go straight across to a battery of experts who join us right here. It's my pleasure to welcome Mr. Saurabh Chandra, former Petroleum Secretary in the Government of India, right here. I've got R.S. Sharma, former CMD, ONGC, R. Jagannathan, Editorial Director, Swarajya Magazine, Syed Zafar Islam, representing the BJP, and Sanjay Jha from the Congress Party. So thanks each one of you for sparing time and being with us, because fuel is a discussion that doesn't just center around the economy and its contours, it also centers around the common man and impacts all our lives. So it's only fair that I begin with you, Syed Zafar Islam, because you represent the treasury benches here. The BJP and your government has drawn massive criticism from the opposition, and like we said, it's become a rallying point for the opposition parties after prices have gone up consecutively for 8 straight days. After all, your entire 2014 campaign was pitched against the UPA government on high fuel prices, amongst, of course, other issues. What would you say in your defense today? Because the UPA says that they tested crude at $150 a barrel. You saw crude at 30. And even though the prices continue to remain so high, you've been a big beneficiary of benign crude.
Let me respond to your question. Yes, there is a truth in what you're saying, that during UPA, the prices were more than $100, and today you know what the price is. But you also have to, in the same breath, you have to also mention that the subsidy which UPA was giving is something which is not being given today. It is linked to the market price, it is deregulated, and it is linked to the international pricing. So, and there is absolutely no subsidy because it has been rationalized. So it is important for all of us to know that during UPA time, the inflation was in double digit. Today, despite all this, the inflation is still well under control in a 4 handle. That is something which you need to acknowledge along with the same breath when you are talking about the price. Yes, the prices have gone up, and we do acknowledge that the government is extremely sensitive about it. The international prices are going up. The demand for crude is going up globally, because there is a global growth. There is a huge demand for crude. Saudi Arabia and some other countries are controlling the production, and as a result, that because of the demand supply mismatch, the prices are in the international market is going up, and it is being seen in the Indian market, because it is reflected, whatever is the market price, international market price is also getting reflected in local pricing as well. But away from that, you have to see few things which is very important, that when the prices were low, we did increase excise duty purely because we had one objective. Our government had one objective, that rural infrastructure, which has been completely neglected by UPA government. They were giving subsidy, which we got rid of subsidy. We controlled inflation. We ensured that the rural infrastructure must be developed, and if you see that be it electrification, the kind of momentum we have seen in last 4 years is something which has not been seen.
Okay, Zafar Sam, let's not take the debate to rural electrification. Zafar Sam, let me allow me to interrupt you. Let's not take the debate now to rural electrification. There is much that we need to discuss on fuel prices, and I'll tell you what, you've upset both sides of the spectrum. On the one hand, you've upset those who want fuel reform because you've been selective in decontrol of fuel prices. It was convenient for you to deregulate fuel prices when crude was at $25, $30 a barrel. Now, when it suits the government, when there are no elections around the corner, then you ask, you nudge OMCs to not
first you
hike
allow me
fuel
to complete
prices. Okay, go ahead, complete your point, sir. Quickly.
No, you were taking undue credit, Mr. Syed Zafar Islam.
All I am saying that the government is monitoring the price. Government is monitoring the price. The petroleum minister has already indicated that the resolution will be soon in place. There will be definitely there. I am expecting that there will be some excise cut for sure to ensure that the consumers are happy. But overall impact, if you see, and particularly the best thing is to see in the same when you are showing the price, also see that inflation number, because at the end of the day you have to see what is the consumer enjoying. With higher inflation
number as well. Don't just look at the petrol and diesel price. I take that point, Zafar Islam. I need to go to other panelists as well. Sanjay Jha, so Zafar Islam is making a big statement on the India development debate tonight, as he says that the government is going to consider an excise duty cut and provide some relief to the consumers. Sanjay Jha, is your grouse to the fact that the government has deregulated petroleum products, or is your grouse to the fact that the government has not cut excise duty? So when the prices were going up, the consumers had to pay, were going down, the consumers weren't given the benefit. Now that they're going up, the consumers are still bearing the brunt. What is your fundamental grouse?
Sandeep, the approach of Mr. Modi's government has been heads I win, tails you lose, and you here is the consumer. The absence of transparency is the fountainhead of this entire problem. Today, for example, if you're told as citizen of India, all of us, anybody watching your program, that logically if the global crude oil prices rises, we should pay more, they would say, well, I think I will pay more. But they are then going to ask this question, that for 4 years when the prices went down, why didn't I pay less? Why did I pay more? I mean, that is the basic, I think, the crux of the problem. That when the prices kept coming down, and they came down from a peak of $150 during the time of the Congress down to $25 during the time of the BJP, and the prices remained higher than they were during our time. And the BJP spokesperson is right, we gave subsidy because we realized it would be very hard on the common man, because oil is anyway an essential commodity. It's an inelastic commodity. So even if the government were to increase the price today, we will all still use our scooters, our cars, or use public transport, where the prices are going to go up. The logic being, and is very straightforward, and that's what I think everybody is objecting to. An inelastic and an indirect tax is a regressive tax. Today, by the way, the poorest person in India and the richest billionaire in India is paying the same price for petrol, LPG or diesel. How is that an equitable tax? Now, the other point that we cannot ignore, this government had the tailwind of the lowest oil prices. They made excise duties happen. They collected around 10 lakh crores of revenues. I call it the great oil robbery, because although Zafar Islam keeps talking about capital assets, we don't know where that has happened, because India doesn't have jobs. Private capital investment hasn't happened, and you can see the larger impact on the economy.
All right.
So I think there are issues here. There are very critical issues of political morality. It's about political morality more than anything else.
Okay, Sanjay Jha, I like the fact that you talk about political morality, but I will also point out what selective holding of price hikes has been done both by you and the BJP. And while we at TT now believe that yes, prices should be deregulated if we are going to move to a market economy, I think we don't like the hypocrisy. And Jaggi, I'm going to come to you on this. The hypocrisy is that when there are elections, you hold on to a price hike, and then when elections are over, prices can go up for 7, 8 consecutive days. And nobody should be making an issue of this, because citizens in India are stupid, they should be holding their heads down and not say a word. Well, that's not going to happen, is what I want to tell the political class here. And the BJP doesn't have to be blamed alone, because that's exactly what the UPA also did. When West Bengal and Tamil Nadu went to elections, I remember when you were in power, you had held on to a price hike also, and then suddenly there was a mammoth price hike that had come in petroleum. What I don't like is the hypocrisy of the political class. When elections are around the corner, you hold price hikes, and when it's over, you let that happen. I just think essentially political class makes a very wrong assumption that voters are so dumb that they will cast their ballot on the basis of the last price hike. I think that is what the real issue is. Jaggi, I want you to come in on that point.
Yeah, I think we are not in a phase of full deregulation. We are in a phase of what is called managed deregulation, where at politically sensitive times you are actually holding back the prices and then allowing the oil marketing companies to recoup the losses immediately after. So that's what you see. 1 month before the election, the oil companies get a whisper in their ear, say listen, hold, and after that you now make up for whatever losses you think you have made in that 1 month period when you could not raise prices. However, I would like to take a positive view on this. I think this government has excellently managed the political economy of a sensitive product like oil. It makes a hell of a lot of sense to raise duties when prices are low, because you had a fiscal problem, and it does make sense, and it gives you cushion to actually reduce prices steadily when they start going out of control, like they are beginning to do now. So if you are at 80 and if you go to 90, you can cut excise by 1 or 2, but they are not going to make a huge difference at the pump level, but they are going to make an important difference at the fiscal level. You can't eat your cake and have it too. If you say that you want fiscal consolidation, you don't want any slippage, and then you say keep on cutting petrol taxes, 26,000 crore rupees 2 excise cut, do you want to do that frequently? How many more 2 rupee excise cuts can you do in the next months if oil hits 90 and 100? I mean, if for every 10 rupees, if you cut 2 rupees, you are going to get a huge fiscal deficit by the end of this year, and in this is also an election year where there are other expenses. So I think let's be clear, so far the government has managed the political economy of a sensitive commodity extremely well. And I hope there is scope for cuts if the fiscal revenues, other revenues show some buoyancy. Oil taxes can be cut, but there is no case for a widespread cut in oil taxes the way the Congress would want to do. Congress mismanaged the oil economy. The NDA has managed the oil economy extremely well.
That's a contrarian view, and that's why I'm loving this debate. Unlike a lot of other channels, we're not in the business of manufacturing outrage. Let's debate the facts. Let's talk on the basis of hard data, and then have a debate. So Sanjay, I know you want to comment, but only fair I let the other two experts, Saurabh Chandra and of course R.S. Sharma, to comment on the contrarian view that Jaggi is taking. I cannot think of too many experts and economists who are going to take the view that he has taken, unpopular as it may be, but that's Jaggi for you. Saurabh Chandra, coming on the point, Jaggi there making a point that that he believes the government has actually managed it well, given the circumstances, managed it too well. It's unreal to expect drastic excise duty cut. Yes, you could have another 2 rupee excise duty cut, but that's about it. I mean, there's only so much of elbow room that the government has, because on the one hand, it does need to meet its fiscal targets. Saurabh Chandra.
Let me start with a very trite expression. There are no free lunches in life. Somebody has to pay for the lunch. There happen to be 4 options available. The first one, which everybody will talk about but unlikely to be implemented, is to bring it under GST. The huge revenue loss makes it almost a non-starter for the time being. The second one is to allow things to continue as they are. The third being that there's an excise cut. And the fourth one is that you go back to a regulated regime where some product, maybe diesel, is subsidized. Now, amongst these options, perhaps for palliative measures, a small cut in excise may be undertaken. But the fact remains that every rupee cut in excise means a revenue loss of about 14,000 crore per annum. Where will this deficit be made up from? So if this fiscal deficit is going to increase, so would inflation. So either way, you're hit by inflation. So the option very clearly to me is that the people will have to bear a part of it, and there may be an excise cut of a rupee or two. Every $10 increase in the product price means a 4 rupee hike in prices. So that's where we stand. When deregulation was done, it was presumed that around $80 there will be a political challenge. With excise duty hikes, it's equivalent to about $100 today. And now a decision would have to be taken. Basically, it will be a political decision, and policy making for a politician finally is pressure from different groups. So let's see how that pans out.
So, Arish Sharma, I wanted to come in on the point that's being made by Jaggi first and Mr. Chandra here. The reality is that there are only very few solutions on the table, and depends on what is perhaps going to be the most pragmatic and the most politically palatable at this stage.
Thanks, Supriya, you asked this, and I recall when all this volatility had started happening in this sector, you were very much on the scene, and we used to have a lot of interaction.
Oh, yes.
I firmly believe that a situation has come where the government need not, the government need not say that the sector stands deregulated. Let me tell you, the sector has never been deregulated. It is a regulated deregulation. The Govt announcement was made in April 2002 that product prices remain deregulated. I used to be Director of Finance of ONGC, and I was surprised how it can happen in this sector. You know, for a developing economy, how this volatility can be, the common masses or the economy sensitive the sectors can be exposed to that volatility. And from $18 a barrel, we have seen from 2002 where it has gone, and you have also witnessed, I also witnessed going up to $147 a barrel. The issue is how that intervention came, and I recall in 1 year, perhaps that was 2008, ONGC contributed 55,000 crores of subsidy sharing. It is easy to say when the prices are falling that it is a deregulation, but when the prices start rising, it's not easy to say. And again, let me say that even when the prices were falling, there was no deregulation, because all that savings was done, that was taken away by the government in the form of 9 different doses of excise duty raises. So that upside which could have gone to the consumer, they thought, let us not create demand discipline situation in the country, let us keep it regulated. So that was kept, and government kept on saying when these prices start rising, we'll give the relief. But since once it has become part of the budget system, the fiscal system, the government is now categorically saying they are not in a position to give that excise duty cut. What should have been done when the prices were falling? Instead of that excise duty being taken away, that a corpus should have been created, because this sector has always been volatile, and there are no fundamentals, let me tell you, in terms of the cost, in terms of demand supply situation. It moves by sentiments. Today the sentiments in international market are quite adverse.
Sure, that's an important point you're making, Mr. Sharma. Allow me to interrupt you. You're saying a corpus.
I don't see the prices coming down.
Okay, you're saying a corpus should have been created. That's an important solution you're putting on the table. When the excise, when the price on crude was, at $25, $30, $35 a barrel, the government should have used that windfall.
Taking that money in the central exchequer, corpus should have been created, and corpus would have been a buffer now.
In time like this, so that's a lost opportunity. I take that point.
To give comfort and to maintain stability for the product prices.
Sure, I take that point. Sanjay, I want you to react to the point made by Jaggi though earlier, saying that it was the UPA that bungled pricing of petroleum products, and actually he believes that the NDA is doing a fine job given the given where crude prices are. Sanjay, a quick reaction from you, and then we'll go to Syed Zafar Islam to react on the point made there by Arish Sharma and Mr. Chandra.
Well, let me be very blunt here. It's an irrational argument. It's got no economic foundations whatsoever. You know, by the way, Sandeep and Supriya, which government imposes petroleum taxes when the international crude oil has gone down by almost, 75% and says that's good economics? Well, let me tell you, what Mr. Jagannathan is publicly confessing is far from managing the political economy well. It's a disastrous handling of the economy, because normally your growth in tax revenues, which funds your welfare and your capital assets, should come from direct taxes. Indirect taxes is regressive. Everybody is getting fleeced for it. The poorest man is paying the same amount that Mr. Jagannathan and you and I are paying. It's highly inequitable. And my larger point, which is why the governments always face resistance, because this is what a lazy, incompetent government will do. Tomorrow, for example, if Mr. Modi's government decides to raise the price of petrol to 100 and to diesel to 90 and to LPG for another number, to kerosene to another number, we'll pay. Do we have a choice? Will you and I stop driving our cars? Which is why, end of day, this is what I call as a very elitist, urban, cosmopolitan view, hey, listen, no matter what, let's reduce the fiscal deficit. Ask a common man, is he even aware of what a Standard & Poor's fiscal credit rating on India stands for? So you're saying that fleece the common man, make 10 lakh crores in the budgetary revenues of the government, get a good rating from Fitch or, World Bank, and feel very thrilled about it. I mean, what are we talking about? I mean, for God's sake, we are living in a very humane society. And I always maintain that, Sandeep, that before we live in an economy, we live in a society.
True.
And I completely dismiss that argument. And I have some very strong views on that. And the reason why I say so is because end of day, it also becomes inflationary. By the way, the common man will pay more for rail, for public transport, for many other services as an intangible cost.
I take that point. I'll let Jaggi respond to that in just a bit. But I need to go to Zafar Islam. Zafar Islam, while we may argue the merits and demerits of these moves, the fact of the matter is that you are facing the ire of the common man. Make no mistake, whoever you talk to today, this is a big talking point, and people are very angry. Fuel prices, of course, depend on crude oil prices, and both crude prices and the dollar, is now higher. Given that the government has limited control on both these levers, isn't it a given then that the government must act on the one lever that it has, which is to lower the very high existing taxes on both petrol and diesel? And this is as much a central government issue as it is a state government issue. Look at the element of tax. At 39 rupees a litre, roughly 26 goes to state governments, since states get 42% of central tax under the 14th Finance Commission. 13 rupees goes to the centre. At what stage, what is the threshold level after which the government will say enough is enough? We need to look at, bringing down taxes.
Sandeep, let me respond to, I've heard everyone, let me respond to each one of them one by one. First of all, I completely agree with Mr. Saurabh Chandra, because he has led on all the options available in front of the government, and the best possible option government has chosen purely because the kind of situation we were in 13-14, where our economy was acknowledged as the most fragile economy among five most fragile economy in the world, and every macroeconomic parameters was in terrible shape. And from there, today it's one of the strongest economy in the world, purely because the decision taken by the government, and today it is definitely put Indian economy in a very sound condition, because the UPA government was believing more in not managing in fiscal deficit. They were not focusing on fiscal prudence. And if you see the six handle, they were in six handle when the UPA government was there. The fiscal deficit was in six handle. Today has been brought down to 3.5%, purely because the prudence policy, the fiscal consolidation roadmap, which has been adopted by this government, and this was possible partly because the excise duty, which has been increased when the prices of crude was coming off in 2014-2015, and as a result, the overall economy is back in shape. And secondly, the Congress was very happy leaving last section of the society in darkness. There was no electrification. They were very happy. Yes, they can be very happy because they only believe that the urban city should be developed and not the rural masses. And that is the focus of our government. on rural infrastructure, rural development and electrification. If you see all the numbers, it's the data. If you see that 1 lakh kilometer has been built in rural areas by NHI.
One second. Syed Zafar Islam, that is not the topic of debate today. What are you talking about? No, Syed Zafar Islam, please wait. No, I will not let you, because this is rural electrification is not the topic. We've done a rural electrification debate, and it's not as if the mile alone, right? This was a leg that you covered, and all credit should go to you. No, 1 second. Rural electrification is not. No, I'm not sorry.
And what Mr.
I want to talk about tax collection.
Mr. Sharma
No, I want to talk about tax collection, and I want to go to Jaggi. No, 1 second. No,
I'm saying
I will
that
go to Jaggi right now. And Jaggi, you said that the... Okay, go ahead very quickly.
Fiscal deficit, that buffer always is available for you to compromise on the fiscal deficit and reduce the prices and provide some subsidy to the common man. And that option is always available with the government, and government will consider
so we are keeping your prices high. No, Syed Zafar Islam, this is not making sense. Your arguments are not making sense, sir. I will go across to Jaggi. Zafar, just give me a minute. I have to go to Jaggi right now, and I will come back to you, because rural electrification is not the debate and I don't want to waste any more time on that. Jaggi, coming to you. You said that the government has managed the oil dynamic and the oil economy rather well. I'll point out some numbers just for the benefit of our viewers. In fiscal year 15, and these numbers include both the state and the centre's collections, the government collected 2.87 lakh crore. In fiscal year 15, 3.663 for fiscal year 16, 3.69 lakh crore, fiscal year 17, 4.63 lakh crore, and fiscal year 18, I think the last available figures were 3.49 lakh crore from crude and oil petroleum products. The outrage is on account of the fact that the common man is being punished when prices are going high. But the common man was not the complete beneficiary when prices were low, and prices went to under $30 a barrel in 2016. Is it unreasonable to now expect some respite? Fuel taxes account for 55% of what we are paying on petrol pumps. That's outrageous, and hasn't the government profited enough in the last 4 years? That's the moot question. They've profited enough. Now pass on some of the profit to the common man.
See, let's look at it this way. I mean, in the last 2016-17, according to the oil companies, 2,67,000 crores was the central collection on taxes, 1,89,000 crore was the state collection on taxes. But effectively, 2/3 of this is actually state collection, because 42% of central collections go to states. So more than 3 lakh crores actually went to states. And the reason why GST is not being applied is because states want their revenue freedom, and they want to have huge collections from oil because of GST. They want their own independent source of revenue. That's why it's not coming under GST, and it's not going to happen. Now, when coming to the common man issue, let me put it this way. There is a small case for keeping diesel prices reasonably in check, and there may be an excise cut which should be focused more on diesel than petrol. But petrol is by and large not a poor man's issue. You could say the new consuming class, which is using motorbikes and other things, is using petrol, but I don't think they should be favored at this cost, at a huge cost of large losses in revenue, which will completely ruin the fiscal balance. And let's not forget another fundamental thing. High petrol taxes equal to carbon taxes, and the world over, and especially a country that imports 80% of its oil, if you do not have high carbon taxes, you are actually doing ecological damage. You cannot have competent solar power or alternate energy sources if your oil prices are so low that they are no longer competitive. Renewable energy needs reasonably high fossil fuel prices. You are causing pollution, you are causing an import bill, you are causing a CAD problem, you are causing a fiscal deficit problem. Is it worth it, all that thing? I think high prices resulting from higher inflation, which is what NDA has managed to keep in check. You are now saying the poor man, and as though it's only the petrol or the diesel that affects him. But what affects the poor man is the level of prices. And if inflation is under check, the poor man actually benefits.
Okay, I take that point. Saurabh Chandra, I want you to react to this point made there by Jaggi. Sanjay Jha calls it an elitist argument. Can costly oil act as a form of carbon tax, depress demand, which in turn could check prices? Will demand be dented if prices, stay steep? You think, is that likely to happen?
I think anybody who stays in Delhi and who's gone through the harsh pollution of the winters would agree with the carbon tax argument. The point where I would disagree is that perhaps diesel is more polluting and its consumption is 3 times that of petrol. So there is not too much argument from the ecological angle for increasing the differential between the petrol and diesel prices. On the contrary, the closer they are brought, perhaps the consumption of diesel would go down. The other way to cut diesel consumption is that there is so much generating capacity on diesel, the power generating capacity. If only the DISCOMs can improve their performances, it's a governance issue, then you will automatically see a decline in diesel consumption. What is worrying is the increase in the consumption of petrol and diesel over the last couple of years. That needs to be looked into, and I think the carbon tax argument is very valid because you can't have death by breath.
Agree with you. I live in Delhi and I can tell you how miserable the situation is. But I think it also drives me to a point where we talk about alternate fuels. And Mr. Arish Sharma, I want you to come in on that. Both Mr. Chandra and Jaggi make a very important point that the consumption of petrol and diesel has only gone up. And just for the benefit of viewers, 6 million vehicles have been bought by Indians in the last 2 years. So that's the kind of consumption, that's the kind of demand that we're talking about. But aren't there inherent flaws in the policy framework then? I mean, how does the government expect to discourage fossil fuel, diesel, petrol if it keeps prices of hybrid and electrical vehicles as high as it has under the GST and other taxes? Mr. Sharma.
I feel, Supriya, the government is taking the right steps in that direction, promoting renewables, promoting the green energy sources, solar, wind, and all that incentives being given. That is the right. But let me tell you, it is not easy to wish away fossil fuels. Coal still remains, king coal, as the dominant, having share of the primary energy, their rather share is alarmingly going up. Same, the oil, the share also going up. In a developing economy like India, I personally feel it's not feasible, it's not done to put those kind of carbon taxes. Developed nations, yes, they are doing, but I don't think that is possible where it has direct impact on the economy, like diesel. I absolutely agree with Chandra Saab, with all the respect that diesel is more polluting. But thing is that diesel is a price which has a cascading effect. It is used in transport sector. All these commodity prices will get affected. And I'll not go into the politics. I'll only say that it may be seen that immediately the other inflation rates are high, but if diesel prices remain high, it is soon going to have that cascading effect, and we are soon going to have that price rise to happen. That's why I'll reiterate, I strongly believe that some sort of deregulation has to become. The prices of commodity for the poorer sector of society below poverty line, like for the kerosene, have to be kept subsidized. LPG has to be subsidized to some extent, diesel also, but there's no case for petrol, and the government has to intervene. They have to see that whatever excise duty increases they had done,
they should reverse it.
That relief has to be given.
I take that point, Mr. Sharma.
And there have been statements after statements that relief will be given.
And yet it's not come through. Zafar Islam, excise duty is one part of it. Why can't the extraordinarily high central excise not be lowered? Why can't the BJP, which rules 21 states of India now, since you are in this mission to move for Congress Mukt Bharat, why can't you convince your own state governments to lower state VAT? After all, these two components greatly inflate fuel prices in India, and surely you have enough leverage with these state governments to push them to give some relief to the consumers.
Well, if you see the Honorable Petroleum Minister, well, last time when he cut excise duty, he also made a request to all the state government to reduce the VAT. Some of the state government, all BJP ruled state, did respond to that, and they did cut to some extent, but of course there are some states which they have yet to respond to that request made by the Honorable Minister, purely because, as someone rightly pointed out, that it's an important source of revenue for the state, and any reduction will definitely impact their budget as well. So somehow we faced a lot of resistance in convincing the state administration, state government, and to reduce the VAT or cut the VAT, purely because that's an important source of revenue for them. But having said that efforts are on. We are requesting the BJP ruled states to definitely, all the states, particularly BJP ruled states, to provide some relief to the consumer purely by cutting some VAT. How many will respond to our request? It is time for us to see. But also, I would like to ask Sanjay Jha. All the time they were talking about and giving lecture to us. There are few states left for still Congress is ruling, and they also have the option to reduce and at least showcase to the world that yes, what they mean, what they preach, they also practice, and they can cut VAT and demonstrate to the people of this country. Yes, they can also cut VAT, and while BJP ruled states are not cutting, but they have not demonstrated such thing because it's all for political purpose. He is making this kind of statement, but when he goes back, all the GST council where such discussions are being done, even to bring this under GST, you see a lot of resistance coming from the Congress ruled state and their finance minister. So they are preaching, but they are not practicing. And I'm saying that we find resistance. Yet we are pushing state government to reduce some VAT, and also we expect. I particularly expect, given some threshold, I'm sure the honorable minister will have in mind before he starts cutting excise duty as well.
Okay. I get your point there, and I think that's a valid point. The BJP governments have been asked and requested by their party chiefs and the Prime Minister, but they're very resistant. They usually are not so resistant in other issues, but here they're very resistant because obviously this considers revenue. But Sanjay Jha, he also raises a valid point. Why can't the Congress-ruled states do something? You're ruling in Punjab, Mizoram, and also in Puducherry, and now you will form a government with JDS in Karnataka. Do we expect some respite in these 4 places?
Well, you know, typical BJP red herring. Supriya, let me tell you, what the BJP spokesperson is not telling the truth. If the BJP wants to put the petroleum products under GST, they can do it tomorrow. By the way, they have the majority of the states, even though we are coming back in Karnataka, and they need 75% of the support in a vote in the GST Council. The truth is Dharmendra Pradhan has been talking through his hat. I mean, he said that months ago. Why hasn't he delivered? Why hasn't the finance minister delivered? You know what Dharmendra Pradhan will tell you? We have written to the finance ministry. 1 minute. You please do not interrupt me. I did not interrupt you. Please be decent, my dear friend. Yeah, please do not interrupt.
No,
now the answer, Supriya, is very straightforward. This is political hypocrisy.
You have a fixation talking about BJP.
Mr. Islam, Mr. Islam, let him complete Mr. Islam, this is not, this is,
what will your complete his point? Sanjay Jha, Supriya,
yeah, this important man always interrupts me.
Okay, Mr. Islam, please.
You have to lower his microphone.
That's not how we do debates. You know it, sir. That's not how we do debates in this channel. Sanjay Jha, please make your point quickly.
Yeah. The truth is that the Bharatiya Janata Party is politically hypocritical. They are misleading the people of India. If they want to bring it under GST, they can do it tomorrow.
What about you?
And I want to say it publicly on your channel because you are a respected channel. You are taken seriously. Let me tell you this. Even if some of the parties were to oppose, not that we are going to, we will support them. I am making a public statement. If the government wants to reduce the prices on or bring every petroleum product under GST, we will support them. The ball is in your court. I call this a great oil robbery. This is a betrayal of the people of India, because you and I can sit here and argue till the cows come home, but what is the truth? Why did Mr. Modi's government say this will be mark-to-market pricing and then did not? So that we can come here and say, well, you know what, we have to contain fiscal deficit. Well, then the government should say publicly, we did not get the GDP growth, we haven't got the revenues, we have failed, and therefore we are so incompetent that we have no choice but to ask the common man to make us run the government. That is the hard truth.
Sanjay Jha,
Why are
okay,
we trying to dodge
okay, Sanjay Jha, you made an important point and we need to debate that because...
Last point, just 15 seconds.
Okay, sure,
15
complete.
seconds. 15 seconds.
Okay.
The last 15 seconds. You see, the oil companies are owned by the government of India principally, and an Indian oil, Bharat Petroleum, Hindustan Petroleum or any other company will be paying fat dividends to the government because they will be making higher profits. The common man is actually getting a double whammy.
I take that point. Since you raised the issue of GST, and I think it's important that on this channel at least we should have a slightly more nuanced debate on including petroleum products under GST. You know, I know everyone's today been talking almost as if, you know, it can be done tomorrow and there is some button that needs to be pressed and petroleum products will come under GST and then there will be great relief to consumers. Saurabh Chandra, I'll come to you, Jaggi. Saurabh Chandra, your reaction first. Is it foolhardy to presume putting fuel under GST will be the end of all woes? I mean, state governments derive a lion's share of the revenues from sale of fuel, and bringing them under GST would mean a significant decline in their revenue collections, which then will have to be compensated by no one else but the centre. Where is the money to compensate going to come from? So, is the debate on fuel under GST simply a distracting tool?
There is no money to compensate the states. If you're looking at a GST rate of 28%, today on petrol, if you add VAT and excise, it's almost 100%. Mumbai is an exception where it's much higher. On diesel, it will be about 75%. Now, if you were to add the numbers, they are huge numbers, and there is no space anywhere to fill this gap. So, either the rates are changed, that 28% becomes much higher, 75% or something. Only then can you think of bringing it under GST. Otherwise, it's not happening.
Straight answer, and that's a very candid answer. The revenue neutral rate will ensure that the prices stay high and nobody, it's going to be a political suicide, a political harakiri of sorts, and nobody's going to agree to that. But I think states, I wonder if states will also agree to the fact that letting go of revenue of that kind. But let me bring across this to Jaggi. And Jaggi, you know, this is a very simplistic argument that's made many times. There is no choice but to bring it under GST. To bring it under GST was not so easy because the Congress in its own draft of the Constitutional Amendment Bill of the GST had also not put petroleum. The BJP government will obviously find it extremely hard to negotiate with their own constituents. I mean, their own states are not listening to them as far as reducing VAT is concerned. Do you think that's too simplistic an argument? Bring it under GST and everything will be fine, because like Mr. Chandra pointed out, excise plus VAT is almost 100%. And, you know, a revenue neutral rate there will mean much higher prices, and who's going to commit to that?
Yeah, I mean, on this I agree with Sanjay Jha, because this whole business of GST is a red herring. It is not going to happen for two reasons. One is that GST, when states committed to GST, they have already let go of substantial fiscal autonomy. So, when oil is the only one that gives them a degree of revenue control and fiscal autonomy, why would they want to bring it into GST? Other thing is, bringing GST in oil would actually end up distorting the GST structure even further. If you are going to put, say, a GST rate of 70% or something, or whatever it is you think is going to be revenue neutral at some point, then you are going to add one other layer to the GST regime. So, let's not even talk about oil. It's not going to happen in the near future. At some point, let's say if GST engine starts firing phenomenally and you get 1,30,000, 1,40,000 crores every month, then you can think of reducing your total taxation of the oil sector. But till the rest of the products start generating huge revenues and the leakages are filled up, then only you are going to see GST talk becoming more stable. At this point, it is just a red herring. No state, forget about whether it's not a Congress or BJP issue. No state, whether BJP or Congress, is going to let go of oil revenues at this stage. They get 2/3 of the total revenue. So, it's more a state issue than a central issue, and central issue only to the extent that they have to compensate states for GST losses. So, I think you must make sure that GST cannot be discussed like this as though it's some kind of instant solution tomorrow.
Islam, then why are you doing it? Why does a petroleum minister and several ministers of the central government, tell people, and unfortunately, a lot of people fall prey for it. Media falls prey for it. I see so many journalists talk about it as if, this can be done tomorrow. Are we so naive to not understand the complexity of this issue? Why are you spinning this narrative as if it can be done tomorrow, as if some third hand of God is stopping you from doing this, or the Congress party or whatever else is? If it can be done, why aren't you doing it? If it can't be done, why are you saying it can be done? Zafar Islam?
Sorry, I missed your question.
No, I am
Sandeep.
asking a
Can you
simple
just repeat
question.
it?
Why is the government
I had lost your
why is the
audio
government
first.
spinning this narrative that it will bring GST under the tax net and it will solve all the woes? If it is so easy to do it, why aren't you doing it? And if it can't be done, then why are you spreading these, spreading this narrative?
See, the lot of opposition leaders are demanding that this be purely because the crude prices are going up, that it should be brought under GST. It's a tough call. Repeatedly, government is saying that it's a tough call purely because of two reasons. Because this VAT is the biggest revenue source of revenue for the state, and they will not let it go. They will not let it go purely because if it comes under GST, and as Mr. Saurabh Chandra rightly pointed out, unless the revenue neutral rate is 75% or 80%, it is not going to. It is going to badly impact the state revenues and impact the state revenue and state budget. So obviously there is a lot of resistance. But what is the expectation? The expectation is that as the informal economy unfolds, it gets folded into formal economy, and GST is stabilized, and the revenue through GST goes up. Then slowly we can consider moving the petroleum product also under GST, but for that the revenue from GST or the overall tax revenue should go up because of the implementation of GST, but it's not going to happen tomorrow, as Mr. Sanjay Jha, who appears to be very naive, and despite knowing the situation and exposed to the market, to financial market, yet he is advocating. I am really surprised, because he should understand the dynamics. What are the dynamics? Why it is not coming under GST? Because the states are there. A state, just because it is a BJP ruled state, doesn't mean that they will let go finances. And from where they, as he rightly pointed out, Mr. Subhash Chandra, from where the finances will come? You have limited resources, and you have to meet. You will also control the fiscal deficit, and you will also have the expectation that everything should be put in place. It cannot happen. Either you will have to again see this the fiscal deficit going to six handle, and government borrowing should go up. Then only you can consider all those things. Otherwise, otherwise it cannot happen.
All right. Zafar Islam, you make an important point there, and I think the panel broadly agrees, and so does the representative from the BJP, that GST is not this magic wand that will come and will solve all fuel problems. That's not going to happen. It will be very tough to put fuel under the GST. But Mr. Saurabh Chandra, I do want to ask you on the fiscal space in India, and too much is written and said about the macro impact of oil. Now, while many have pointed at the rising risk that high crude oil poses towards fiscal slippage, Rajiv Kumar of Niti Aayog was here with us about an hour back, and he insists that the government will have an additional 50 to 55,000 crore rupee via GST collection of 13 months instead of just 12 this fiscal, due to the switch from accrual to cash accounting. Now, shouldn't that help the government to reduce excise comfortably by, say, about a rupee? Because like you rightly pointed out earlier in the show, a 1 rupee cut in excise is going to have a revenue loss of roughly about 14,000 crore rupee. Now, if that is the overall arithmetic, why the delay?
I think if resources can be found, then maybe a 2 rupee cut in excise. Now, excise is specific duty, VAT is ad valorem, and similarly, since prices have risen, a lowering of the VAT rate, both should be done in tandem, particularly in Mumbai, where there is an additional cess, if I am not wrong, of ₹9. There is a much bigger case of cutting the cess, the VAT rate, and also excise by maybe 2 rupees, and reducing VAT by a similar amount.
Okay. So, Arish Sharma, I think Saurabh Chandra kind of broadly points out which direction should this go in. A 1 rupee cut is neither here nor there. It has to be at least 2 rupee cut. But isn't it also time that the government aggressively looks at non-tax revenue collection like higher divestment proceeds instead of letting the common man reel under pressure just because it doesn't want to upset its own robust revenue collections from oil? I mean, I think that's another part of the argument that really needs to be looked at. Mr. Sharma?
Yes, yes, I agree with you for that matter. But as I said, you know, these in bits and pieces, this sort of relief, though it will be, sentiments will be seen that at least the government has agreed to the, you know, public demand to lower some prices. But it seems that what comes out that 1 rupee excise duty translates to 14,000 crores of revenue loss. So that is a kind of impact. They are not willing to let it go because of the, you know, managing fiscal deficit, and the argument repeatedly comes because they have launched so many welfare schemes. They do not have enough the funds to give that sort of relief. But the issue is when we talk about the sector, especially this petroleum product prices, the current the prices, I feel they are not reasonable. That relief has to come. How the government manages, there are different kind of mechanisms. In the past also, lot of the option analysis had been done. So without going into the politics of it, that whether in the NDA that was rightly done or UPA did it rightly. So, but I feel on the part of the common man, that common man does need a relief. Immediate relief in terms of the reduction in the prices, and I am afraid the way the international prices are going up, so these product prices are going to go up further.
That's an important point you're making. Closing comments then.
You cannot let them bleed.
Okay, you can't let them bleed, and you need to give some respect to the consumer, says Arish Sharma. Closing comments. I've just got 2 minutes on the show. Jaggi first, and then to the two politicians. Jaggi, can the government take a chance? You know, like Mr. Sharma pointed out, chances are that crude prices might inch further north. You know, $90 a barrel. Who knows? $100 a barrel as we run up to 2019. No one can predict them. Can this government take a chance of upsetting the middle class in an election year by keeping fuel prices high and refusing to intervene? You know, a nominal 1 rupee, 2 rupee excise duty cut, like you pointed out, isn't going to do much if crude is going to go to $90 a barrel. So doesn't it risk being seen as insensitive? You know, the urban middle class has usually been a catchment area for the BJP. Are they going to risk upsetting them by this, policy framework?
In fact, I suspect that what the government is doing, the reason why they are reluctant to cut it now is because they may want to cut it because oil price might reach 90 by the end of this year when you have 3 elections coming up. So it's more likely that if they want to keep backload the cut so that you have revenues now coming for the next 3-4 months, and around October if you give it a cut, then that will have slightly salutary impact on the state assembly elections, I think, and then you may have to do it again in February or whatever it is before the big Lok Sabha election. So it all depends on how oil prices pan out. So I think they are managing the excise now in order to be able to cut it at more strategic points in the political landscape.
Okay, they're waiting for perhaps a more opportunity to cut in. But Zafar Islam, I have a more, a bigger question to ask you. That is that the plan, that let's stock up on revenues now and closer to elections, let's do it? Or is it because, you know, eventually the middle class doesn't really matter? The middle class will make a noise, but the middle class will not protest. The middle class doesn't go to vote. So why bother, you know? Is that being consciously done?
No. So every citizen of this country matters to NDA government, irrespective whether it's a middle class, whether it's lower class, lower middle class, or upper middle class, or the elite class. Everyone matters as far as NDA is concerned. But what is more important, that you will have to de-link the two. It is not strategically that only before the election we will cut the rate or wait for the election time to reduce the excise duty. It is a dynamic situation, and government is examining on a regular basis. Yes, as of now, if you see, given the global dynamics, if you see the stance Saudi Arabia has taken, there is upward pressure on crude prices, and it is very evident. And I'm sure the government and the Honorable Minister must be monitoring that. And as and when they feel appropriate that the excise duty should be cut, I'm sure they will take that call purely in the interest of the people of this country, and not keeping election in mind, but keeping what relief to be provided to the people of this country.
Okay, you're saying you're not acting keeping elections in mind, you'll act in the interest of the middle class. Sanjay, quick last word to you. We're running out of time.
No, I'll keep it short. I think the government has blown away an absolutely favorable tailwinds for 4 years by frittering away those revenues earned. My fundamental point is, life is about a balance. If the government believes that they need to contain fiscal deficit, and therefore, because fiscal deficit which is higher can be inflationary, then they should also realize that by increasing excise duties and making petroleum more expensive, particularly diesel, that will anyway be inflationary. So it's a question of how well have you managed growth. The one factor that we probably didn't touch is if you manage growth, you get your revenues. You don't have to indulge in indirect tax revenues at all. And I think what you're seeing right now with just around a couple of quarters to go is I think the government has really surrendered on any growth and reforms completely. And therefore, we are on an autopilot, to be honest. I mean, end of day, no matter what you do, oil prices are now going to be a headwind. The Iran, the US decision on the Iran nuclear deal is going to have its repercussions, and we are going to see harder days. And at least the government can do now is to be honest enough to say, we will link the prices to international prices. Well, people, if they are going to see rougher times, let the government be honest about it and not show a lack of integrity.
Right. All right. On that note, completely out of time on this edition of the India Development Debate, Mr. Saurabh Chandra, Mr. R.S. Sharma, R. Jagannathan, Syed Zafar Islam, and of course Sanjay Jha. Thanks very much for this enriching debate on fuel prices. It's always an emotive issue because fuel impacts every citizen of this country. The outrage over sky-high prices is perhaps justified not because it's unaffordable, but because it is being done selectively and is laced with a little bit of hypocrisy there. We in India are willing to pay for nation building, but the timing of elections can't decide what I pay at the petrol pump.
It has massive implications on inflation, on the fiscal deficit, on growth at large. So it's a tough call for any government to take, and no wonder this government is struggling with it as well. Out of time then, on this edition of the India Development Debate. Up next is Top 10 and keep it with ET now.